So once again, my name's Nigel Wilkinson, and along with Bea Pascal, Scott White, and Sophie, we sort of make up the fine dining team. So on behalf of Sophie, Scott, and Bea, a very warm welcome to the tasting this morning. Hopefully everybody should have received their tasting samples. We've got a fantastic lineup this morning. We've got some lovely producers that make absolutely fantastic wines joining us. One thing about Boutinot, Boutinot, dare I say, without sort of launching into a sales pitch about Boutinot, people recognise Boutinot as sort of, you know, good value, and obviously we've got our own estates, and you know we certainly make wines at a particular level, should we say. Plus, also in our portfolio, we've got some absolutely fantastic producers that we represent as UK agents. And I think today sort of demonstrates that in the fact that we're going to go for a world tour today. Yes, we're going to start off in England with one of our own estates, Hennes. Then we move to France and look at the fantastic wines of Saint-Chinian with Christine from Pro Bagatelle. We then go to California. So joining us from California is good friend Dimitri Mesnar, talking about Nielsen Estates. And then we also then go to Veneto, and we go to Pra, the fantastic estate of Pra, where Valentina Adami is going to introduce the Pra estate, and also the Valpolicella Superior Paso. We then go to central Spain. We go to Campo de Boja, and we have Guillermo introducing the Cabriola from Bodegas Borsao. And then we finish off with the legendary wine from Chile, Coyam, introduced by Jose Terrado. So now I noticed that, Mattia, if you wouldn't mind switching your video off, please, because everyone can see you at the moment. So if you get perfect, there we go. So once again, thank you very much for joining us. A big thank you to Steve in IT. As always, I'm completely rubbish with this type of thing. I've said it before, I don't know what to switch, how to switch it, which buttons to press, etc. So Steve is doing all of that for me. I'm just merely talking to the producers, looking at you, wonderful people, and drinking some wines this morning. So big thank you to Steve for his help as always. A big thank you to Yvonne and the customer service team for ensuring that everyone got sent their wine packs. Hopefully everybody has the wines in front of them. If you do have any questions, please post your questions on the chat box, and I will attempt with the aid of my glasses to read all the questions and then ask the producers the questions accordingly. Please, as I said, keep yourselves muted, and also your speaker switched off. Otherwise, you will be coming in on the call and interrupting the producers. But today it's all about, 6 lovely wines, 6 lovely producers, 6 really, really good and interesting people. So once again, thank you very much to everybody involved, especially the participants for tuning in on a Monday morning when I'm sure you'd rather be in bed. But without further ado, we're going to start off today's tasting by staying in England. We're going to go right down to the south coast. We're going to East Sussex, and we're going to go and speak to Colette and have with us the lovely barrel Chardonnay. So Colette, are you there?
I'm here. Good morning.
Fantastic. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. A little bit chilly. Obviously, it's snowing in large parts of the UK today, and the winery doesn't have central heating. So yeah, we are a little bit cold, but it's beautiful. And so yeah, we're very well, thank you.
Fantastic. Now, just for everybody's benefit, Colette, can you just tell us whereabouts you are?
Yeah, so Hennes Vineyard is in a little village called Hurstmondsue, which is 5 kilometres inland from the south coast. We're in East Sussex, and our nearest town is Eastbourne. So kind of south of London and east on the south coast, kind of nestled in the shadow of the South Downs. And as I say, 5 kilometres from the coast.
Superb. And just tell people that don't know, tell us about Hennes.
Yeah, so Hennes is an English vineyard and winery. As I say, we're based in East Sussex, which is very much the kind of heartland of English wine production. We were established in 2007 on the site here with 3 hectares of vines planted with Chardonnay, Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier, the 3 classic varieties for sparkling wine. About 40% of the vineyard is planted to Chardonnay, and the vines have been planted in 3 different waves, kind of 2007, 2008, 2009. So they're really reaching good maturity now. Our little pocket of Sussex is actually on clay, not on chalk. The chalk that the English wine industry loves to talk about, kind of coming under the English Channel from the Champagne region. It took a left turn at Eastbourne and headed over the South Downs, and we're actually on clay here. We are practically at sea level. So we, as I say, we're just inland from the coast. So we're at sea level, pretty low altitude, which means that we are a pretty warm little site. We benefit from this coastal breeze and this coastal influence that goes through the vineyard. Disease pressure in England can be a challenge, so having that coastal breeze is a real benefit for us. And yeah, there's 3 of us on site. So there's myself, I'm the estate manager and winemaker. There's Colm Evans, who's the vineyard manager and assistant winemaker, and Will Robinson, who is a vineyard and winery assistant. And small team. Yeah, we're a small team that does everything. So we're currently not pruning today, but we might pop out for a couple of hours. We're playing with blends this morning, but yeah, we do everything in the vineyard and we do everything in the winery. So there's the 3 of us. It's super hands on. But our production isn't only limited to the 3 hectares we grow. We do work with other growers, so that it's a pretty common model, obviously, in the Champagne region. You spread your sites, you spread your terroir, you spread your access to fruit, and ultimately, kind of, if the ultimate expression is the blend, then the more independent parts you have to play with, the greater the sum of those individual parts. So yeah, so total production is larger than the vineyard we've got here.
Just to go back a step, sorry. So going back to sort of, dare I say, sort of as the French would refer to your sort of terroir. Now, as I understand, you're actually sort of sheltered a little bit. So it's almost like a unique sort of microclimate where you are, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And to be honest, I think every winemaker will probably tell you that they love their site and they think their site is great. But I do think it's true of Hennes. I think we are a pretty special combination of things here. As I say, we are only a few kilometres inland from the coast, so you do get this kind of salty saline in the air. You do get this breeze. England is a really marginal climate. We're at the very edge of where it's possible to grow grapes and ripen fruit. And so kind of every little bit kind of helps. And actually, the low altitude that we've got, the fact we're near sea level, in comparison to, say, the guys that are planted on chalk, who are typically a bit higher, means that our site is slightly warmer than other sites. So we bring in our fruit maybe 10 days earlier than some of the guys growing on chalk. That means that we can often get our fruit just a little bit riper before harvest. And that benefits particularly the Pinots. It brings this really delicious richness to it. And as you say, we kind of sit in the shadow of the South Downs, which is the high peaks around here. And that tends to attract the bad weather, the worst of the weather. So, I mean, Sussex and Kent are the driest, sunniest pockets of the UK anyway. And then as a site, we're pretty well protected. The wind and the coastal breeze protects us from frost. It moves the bad weather on pretty quickly. So as an individual site, we're also pretty dry and pretty good weather for the UK. Okay.
Now, in terms of sort of the vineyards as well, having sort of been lucky to sort of visit the vineyards on numerous times. Tell us a little bit sort of what you do in the vineyards that sort of might be a little bit sort of unique, or do you have a philosophy within the vineyard?
Well, we are, well, I guess it's the old adage really, that the great wine starts in the vineyard, and you can't make great wine without knowing what's going on in the vineyard. And so the advantage of us just being a team of three is that there's nothing that we don't know. And actually what's also been quite interesting is that obviously COVID's been terrible, but what has come out of it is that we've had time to really go back and focus on the vineyard, really take the time to do some of the things that we often get to the end of the season and we look at our wish list and we're like, oh, well, we were going to do that, and we were going to do that. And really the last 12 months has really enabled us to kind of go back to basics a little bit. What I mean by that is we're founder members of the Sustainable Scheme of Wines of Great Britain. And so there's a big focus at the moment on reducing our impact into the environment. And rather than just remove one of the things you do, you need to find alternatives. So that means a lot more work in the vineyard in terms of vine balance, reducing the sprays, a lot more mechanical and manual intervention. So we've been doing a lot of work on the kind of under vine cultivation, the weed management, things like subsoiling to improve soil health. So there's been a lot of work gone into that. The vines are now 15, 16 years old. So some of them are beginning to struggle in patches. So we've revised the pruning technique. We've brought all the pruning back in-house so that, and I have to hands up here, it's the guys that do most of the pruning. That's where my supervisory capacity kicks in, if I'm being honest. But all of the pruning's been brought back in-house, so that, because the pruning sets the vines up for the season. And if you don't get that right, then you're going to always be struggling. And so all of that's come back in-house. So I guess in terms of our philosophy, it's about trying to pay attention, really know what's going on, be able to respond, understand how the different blocks vary, how it varies at the top of the slope to the bottom of the slope, understand how the weather and the seasons are changing, and kind of be able to respond so that you can bring in your very best fruit, and encourage as much natural balance out in the vineyard as possible. You know, we've got red kites and buzzards above the vineyard, and they help keep the small bird population in kind of check. So a lot of manual canopy management over the summer to reduce inputs. So that's kind of our vineyard philosophy, I suppose.
So a lot to do for just 3 people.
Yes, it is. Yes, it keeps us busy, which is why every now and then we put out a call to the Boutinot team and say, does anybody want to come down and help us? So we had some of your guys down last year bud rubbing in that really hot spell that we had. So that was fun, because it is a lot of work. So we tend to invite people in to help when we're a bit fed up with it.
So just to go back as well, very, very, very briefly, and I know you have touched on it. So the vineyard was established in 2007, and then Boutinot purchased the property. When was that?
So Boutinot purchased it in 2016, 2017. So it was established by a gentleman called Larry Waugh, who also ran another business. And after kind of 8 years, it just couldn't manage both. And Boutinot were looking to invest in a UK home. Obviously, we've got the French and the South African properties, and being a UK-based company, they wanted to have a UK home. Also recognizing the growth and potential of English wine. They had been distributing Henner's wines since 2012, knew the previous owner, Larry, really, really well. And it all came together basically. So it seemed a logical purchase for Henner's, for Boutinot to purchase Henner's in 2016, 2017. And then since then, there's been significant investment in the winery capacity. We have more than doubled winery capacity in that time. And we are going to be doubling it again this year. So we're going to have double the size of the current winery footprint, and a real investment in the infrastructure of the winery. So it's been a really fascinating couple of years, and aligned to that, there's been a full rebrand to modernize the look, the feel, and hopefully reflect the direction that the wines are moving into. This kind of fresh, modern classic approach is where we're taking things.
Okay. Now, would it be fair to say that the primary focus of the estate is sparkling wine?
Yes, that is very fair to say. It has been. But since 2018, we've been looking at still wines and the potential for still wines, which is the one we're going to taste today. But it is going to form a growing part of our program going forward. And one of the key things is to know that you want to try and make a still wine. And going back to what I said about the vineyard, it's about identifying parcels in the vineyard. It's about site selection. It's about recognizing which clones or which blocks might lend themselves best to still wine production, and really putting your full focus on that. At the moment, I think still wines will probably be 10% of what we do. But that will change over the years. And there's a number of reasons for that. You know, it is warmer, climate is lending itself to us being able to make some really great still wines. Our understanding and knowledge of the sites and our ability to coax the very best fruit out for the different wine style is constantly improving. So there's a number of reasons for that. And pragmatically, you can release still wines sooner to the market than sparkling. So you know, let's be honest, there's a few different reasons why still wines might also form part of the portfolio. We did our first still wines from the 2018 vintage. We didn't make any in 2019, but we're making some again from 2020. And as I say, now it's going to be a much more focused part of the portfolio going forward.
Okay, well, let's all pour ourselves a glass of the Henner's Barrel Chardonnay.
Yeah.
And Colette, in terms of 2018, how was that as a vintage in the UK?
2018 was the vintage of dreams, and people will talk about it like my parents talked about the summer of 1976, which was, you know, this sunny summer where you could fry eggs on the patio. It was a really great vintage. In England, invariably, for growing grapes, things go wrong during the season. Frost, poor flowering in June, difficult summer period, something usually goes wrong. In 2018, nothing went wrong. It was a dream season. We had great conditions for bud burst, great conditions for flowering. So we got big yields coming off of a really difficult 2017 where lots of people lost crop to fruit. So 2018, we had both volume and quality. And it's quite unusual to get both of those in abundance in one vintage in England. Obviously, we're hoping that's going to start to happen more frequently. And 2020 was a good season, for example. It's been, you know, it was hot last year, which is great. So 2018 was the first kind of big vintage that the new Henners had with the Boutinot regime. So we decided we had the luxury to play around a little bit. We identified some parcels of fruit in the vineyard, Chardonnay that we thought could make a really great still wine. And we also identified some Pinots that we put to rosé, which has sold out. But we were identifying parcels. And so we brought this fruit in, we kept it behind, we picked it later. We picked it after the sparkling because we wanted to get a little bit higher sugar levels, allow a little bit more time for that fruit to develop and for that acidity to soften. We brought them into the winery. We whole bunch pressed this fruit. So it wasn't destemmed. It was treated like sparkling. So really delicate pressing. And then we let it settle overnight, and then we racked it straight to barrel, where it went through full barrel fermentation, alcohol fermentation in barrel. And then the wines went through full mallow in barrel before they were brought back together and blended. They spent 9 months in barrel, and then we bottled, and then we allowed it to spend 6 months under cork before it was released last April, May time. And so this is now another few months on from that.
Okay, first question in was from Remy from Le Gavroche. For this particular wine, is it all Chardonnay from the estate?
No, it is a combination of estate fruit and also one of our growers in Kent.
Okay. In terms of the oak regime, can you've mentioned the oak. What type of oak are we talking about, Colette?
So we've got a bit of a mixture, and it's quite fun for us to play around. And because we're still at this kind of start of our still wine program, we're working out what works best for us. I love old older barrels. I love more neutral, softer barrels. So we've got some and slightly larger format barrels as well. So we've got 300 litre French oak barrels. And these were a combination of vintages from 2014, 15, 16, and 17. So there's some older barrels and some new barrels. It's about 10-15% new oak, and then a combination of older oak that kind of fall into the, we don't get rid of barrels, we just add to them every year and allow that to come in, because to a certain extent, I mean, this is a barrel Chardonnay, so we want people to be able to pick up the barrel and the oak influence on it. But sometimes using oak in these wines, it's a little bit like cooking with celery. You kind of, you know, it's in there and it's a background flavor, but you don't want it to be the dominant force. And so when we were crafting with this, we do want that oak influence to come in, but not at the expense of the fruit. 2018 was a really great vintage. There was some lovely ripe fruit coming through, and we don't want the oak to obliterate that. So it's a combination of looking for texture, creaminess, depth, helps soften the acidity without overriding the fruit flavor. So that's kind of where we come from on the oak regime.
Okay, a question coming in from Matteo. Matteo is a master sommelier working at Edition Hotel, Berners Tavern, asking about the pH and also the total acidity of this wine.
I thought somebody might, so I have the analysis in front of me. pH is 3.12 and the acidity is 7 grams per litre.
Okay,
so it went through full, did go through full mallow. So it's still, you know, it's still got this really great freshness on the acidity. What's nice is that the oak settles that out. And so what I think sometimes with oak also, you can be left with a slightly, well, you can be left with the oak feeling or slightly sweet oak characters. And what's nice about the acidity on this for me is that what you're left with is this juicy, salivating, it's mouth-watering, it's fresh, fresh and zesty, and then it's got great length because that combination of the oak and the fruit. Okay,
a question in from David at Panoramic 34. He loves this wine. They currently have the regular Chardonnay. Will the barrel fermented version replace the regular Chardonnay?
Yes, I'm only saying it like that because, to be honest, we keep, you know, it's a little bit evolving. But yes, I think where we've come to is that I think we're going to focus on Chardonnay and barrel. And then this year we've experimented with some Bacchus and some Chardonnay. So in terms of a kind of oaked offering, I think we're going to lean towards developing the oaked Chardonnay program. And then in terms of a kind of non-oaked option, we're looking at bringing in some of that more aromatic characters from Bacchus with the non-oaked Chardonnay. So there'll be a slight more differentiation, I suppose, between the kind of barrel versus non-barrel option going forward. I mean, never say never, but that's currently where we're taking it.
Okay. In terms of the oak, it's all French oak?
Yes.
From any particular forest?
Oh, I don't know about the forests.
Is it Allier, is it Tronquet, is it Limousin?
I don't know. We've got Valérine barrels, Berthemier barrels, Radu barrels. So we have different barrels, and some of them we bought secondhand. So I don't know where they've specifically come from. But we're playing around with coopers to see what works and the different kind of toast levels. So yeah, obviously the difficulty when you play around too much is you can't identify which was the thing that you liked. So we're kind of trying to phase it in to see which what works for us.
Now, as I understand this, although you know we do have sufficient quantity of this, it was a limited sort of production run on this. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was limited production run, and this year will be a limited production run as well. As I say, we are. It's a small percentage of our overall production at the moment, and we want to produce the very best version of what we can in the still wine. So we're not blending to a volume. We're looking at what we've got in tank and what we've got in barrel, and we're crafting the right blend for it, so that we're happy with what we've got and we think it's the best we can do. And then that means that there's a certain volume. And the thing is, though, largely that's because our vineyards are designed for sparkling wine. And so we're looking to pick these grapes for sparkling when they're about 10.5% and pretty high acidity, because that's what you want for sparkling base wines. So you kind of have to make your decision in the vineyard how much still wine you want to make any given year. Because if you try and make a still wine out of base wines, the acidity is all over the place, the fruit balance isn't quite there. So to retrospectively try and blend more now dilutes the impact that you want on your still wine, if that makes sense. So the decisions were made last August what we wanted to make, subject to quality. So yeah, they are limited. They are limited at the moment.
In terms, I think from memory, is it 3,800 bottles of this particular wine was produced?
Yeah, and we'll be doing about 4,000 bottles this year.
Okay. Now, in terms of, dare I say, sort of this wine, you know, and I realise and appreciate the audience that we're talking to here, and I'm sure some of you are going to start screaming at the screens, asking what on earth are you talking about? But I certainly remember the days, maybe sort of 30 years ago, where English wine wasn't where it is today, which is a fair assessment. And in terms of this wine, again, this is probably where I'll get a bit of criticism. But for me, I think with Chardonnay, you automatically sort of try and associate it with Burgundy. But for me, I always get this sort of, in this particular wine, it's almost like Maconnais, Chardonnay sort of style to the wine. Is that a fair assessment in your opinion?
I think that's a fair assessment. I think we aren't trying to replicate another region. So we can be inspired by other regions and aspire to be deemed in the kind of same regard as them. To a certain extent, we're making an English wine, and I do want it to have that kind of honeysuckle kind of hedgerow, as well as the citrus that you get from Chardonnay. But I think that and that kind of classic acidity that you get from England. But I think for me, I agree with you. I think it is of that kind of Maconnais ilk. It's fresh, it's juicy, it's got some nice oak balance. There's some nice weight in there. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair comparison.
Okay.
Well, I'd be delighted with that comparison, to be honest. And I think that the freshness in this wine means that it continues to develop beautifully in bottle, and it's got a long way. It's still got a long way to go. I mean, that freshness is still there, and that primary fruit is still really present. So I think it's on a really great trajectory.
Yeah, but funny enough, you've just sort of answered there. Giuseppe from Coq d'Argent's question was basically how much life do you see in this wine? How long do you think it can be drinkable for?
Yeah, well, I mean, every time I taste it, I enjoy it even more, to be honest. And I think we had this conversation last week, Nigel. I think it's the same for you. So I think it continues to evolve beautifully in bottle. So I mean, this currently the trajectory is going to be really, really great for at least the next couple of years. And then because we are still kind of, to be honest, we're still kind of finding our feet with it. It's going to be really interesting for us to track the development of this wine and the kind of the wines that come after it. When we're blending the barrel Chardonnay, we're blending something that we think has got life and longevity in it. The non-oaked version, we're looking for something that's probably going to be more youthful, easier drinking, earlier release type thing. And then the barrel Chardonnay is the one that will have a bit more longevity to it.
Okay, just another quick question. Do you think for the still wines, they will ever go into screw cap?
Yes, in March.
Okay, there we go. That answers that question.
Mainly because design team, and I love the designers, and they've done a really beautiful job. But when the cork, we put this manual tab over it, and there's no machine that can apply the tab to these bottles. So these thumbs applied 4,000 tabs to these. So we're moving to screw cap.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, I think that's all the questions for Colette. I do really love this one. I honestly, it's easy for me to say that, but I do think it's fantastic value for what it is. And I just think, it has everything that you would want from an English Chardonnay.
Thank you.
Excellent. Colette, thank you very much for joining us.
Welcome. Thanks, everybody.
If you could kindly sort of mute yourself and turn your video off. Once again, thank you very much. Thank you, Colette. And then if we could call on Christine next at Clos Bagatelle. So Christine, if you could kindly unmute yourself and turn your video on.
Okay.
Hi,
Can you hear
Christine.
me? Hi, Nigel.
How are you today?
Oh, it's better with my cassette. Do
How
you
are
hear
you?
me? Okay.
Excellent. Very good. Very good. Very good. So you are in Saint-Chinian, and what is the weather like today in the south of France?
Because you speak with me now, the sun arrived. It's really good. I'm very poor. I'm sorry. I'm not English. I'm French, and my English is very poor. Sorry. Colette was brilliant, and
I know how good your English is. So, and I know that you're a lovely, bubbly person. So, so thank you very much for joining us.
After Colette, I just need to try the wine because the Chardonnay, because I don't know this wine, and she is brilliant. She is perfect. It's amazing wine. I think it's an amazing wine, and I hope that you could appreciate also my source of French white wine, which is completely different.
Fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit about Clos Bagatelle, please, Christine?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Nigel, to invite me, and Boutinot's company too. And I'd like to present you my region in the first part, and then my one estate, of course. I think that the region is a very big part. It's a very huge area with a big part near the seaside. And another part, not so well known than the seaside, which is near the hillside. And near the hillside, you can find different appellations like Corbière, Minervois, Forgère, or maybe Pic Saint-Loup, Terrasse de Larzac, which are well known. And of course, the most beautiful region is my region, Saint-Chinian. Saint-Chinian, in fact, is very particular because it's a paradise for geologists. They come with their students to study the different soils because at a few kilometers, you have a real different soil. And Saint-Chinian is close to Montpellier at nearly 1 hour. And we can find 3 great regions: schist soil, limestone soil, and of course, sandstone, which is not well known on altitude. It's very important because, in fact, my white wine is produced on sandstone soil. Then my wine estate is a very old wine estate. This vineyard was established in 1623. It ended on from mother to daughter during 1 century and maybe more now. And after at the beginning, the Clos Bagatelle was a real clos with only 8 hectares, with small plots all around the cellar. When my mother began to run the domain, she had 16 hectares, and now I run the domain with my brother, and we have 60 hectares on 4 different soils. I spoke about the 3 soils of Saint-Chinian, but we have also a plot of Muscat near near Minervois. It's Saint-Jean-Minervois. And we produce many red wines, but also white, rosé, and fortified Muscat.
So in terms of the varietals that you're working with, Christine, could you tell us a little bit about the great varieties that you work with?
Yeah, of course. For the red, it's I think it's classical. We have very old grapes of Carignan, red Carignan, red Grenache, black Grenache, sorry, but also Cinsault. Cinsault for me wasn't very interesting 20 years ago. But now I think Cinsault is very, very interesting. When we have Cinsault on schist soil, we can have very, very fruity wines and very delicate wines. Cinsault also is very interesting to create good rosé wines. And then for the younger grapes, we have Syrah. And for me, one of my favorite grapes, which is Mourvèdre. Mourvèdre, a blend with Mourvèdre and Grenache for me is wonderful. It's amazing. Then for the whites, we appreciate, in fact, to create white wines because it's very young. The appellation, the Saint-Chinian appellation is very young. We began to launch the Saint-Chinian appellation in 2004, and for my one estate, we began to create the white wine in 2006. And for that, we used old grapes like Grenache Blanc, but also old Carignan Blanc. And old Carignan Blanc is very rare. In fact, in France, we can find only 300 hectares of Carignan Blanc. And in my one estate, we have 3 hectares. They represent 1%. It's huge. And in fact, the white Carignan gives very fresh wine with a very good structure. And then we decided with my brother to plant different grapes, sometimes forbidden, sometimes not. For example, we planted Viognier and Vermentino, which are in AOC Saint-Chinian, but we decided also to plant grapes like Petit Mansin or Chenin to obtain good acidity in the wine, because in my region, the problem is the temperature and the soil. We lack of acidity, and thanks to different grapes, we can obtain a good acidity. And for the white that you could try today, it's a blend of 4 different grapes and 3 different soils. The base is Roussanne. Roussanne represents nearly 60% of this blend. Roussanne comes from sandstone. Then we have 30% of Carignan Blanc. Carignan Blanc from limestone soil is a very old plot of Carignan Blanc, more than 100 years. And then Grenache from schist soil. And to obtain fresh wine and fruity wines and floral wines, we add, of course, one of my, not favorite, but one of my fruity grapes, which is Vermentino. Vermentino is very interesting, that gives note of citrus. It's very interesting for that.
Fantastic. Now, in terms of what you do in the vineyards as well, because you follow a very sort of, dare I say, sort of organic approach, is that correct?
Yeah, organic approach, but not really. We have not the certification because, in fact, for me, organic is not a feature. I explained you that my one estate is a family one estate, handed down from mother to daughter, and I'm a mother. And I think that organic is very interesting now only for the label and to explain to the private customer that it's better, but it's not better. I think that now we need to take care to the earth. And I think now we have just a certification which is HVE label that permits to preserve the environment, but also because we don't use pesticide, but we take care to the water. And in my region, water is very important. Finally, I think that in the future, we will be organic, it's normal, but we will be more than organic. We take care to the soil, we take care to the vine, but we take care also during the vinification, because we use a lot of water during vinification. We take care to that. And which is something which is very important when we bottle. Now the period is the period of bottling. For example, the weight, of the bottle was nearly 450 grams. We decided last year to change completely the bottle, and now the weight of the bottle is not so big. It's very, very important for the environment too. We take care to the boxes, plastic, because in fact we can find plastic during the bottling, and we decided to stop with plastic and to change completely with plastic. For me, something else which is more important, the most important is not the certificate, is not to have something else on the label, on the front. Something else which is more important is to take care to the next generation, because in fact, I'm a mother. One of my my way of thinking is to let my wine estate to my children. And I'm very happy. Now my son Matthew decided to work with me. He began 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, and my daughter Mary will begin with me in 2 years. She's very good. She improved English. She's very good English. I'm sorry, not me.
Your English is fine, Christine.
No, I'm
Your
not
English
good.
is fine. And your wines are beautiful. Your wines really,
Thank
really
you.
are beautiful. So
Thank
just to
you.
recap on the white, it's predominantly Roussin with very old vine Carignan Blanc,
Yeah.
Grenache Blanc, and then a little dash of Vermentino just to liven the wine up.
Yeah. And the particularity, in fact, of this wine, in fact, I produce different type of wine. For this white wine, we press all the grapes. We obtain a juice. We clarify the juice at 4 degrees. And in fact, we blend the juices together before the alcoholic fermentation. And when all the juice are together, we can begin alcoholic fermentation at low temperature. It's nearly 12, 14 degrees, not more, to obtain fresh wines. And then after, we can let the wine during 5 months, nearly 5 months, in cask, not in cask, sorry, in vat. And then we bottle end of January or beginning of February. And this wine that you can try today is a very particular wine. It's 2019. I don't know if you remember 2019. In June, it was really particular. End of June, during 1 week, we obtained the same temperature than in Sahara. I remember in June the 28th, the temperature was 54 degrees. It was very, very incredible. And we tried to obtain fresh wines. Fortunately for us, during summer, the summer was not so hot than end of June. We obtained also rainfall and before harvest. And of course, during harvest, the nights were very cool and we can obtain something which is very fresh. And I appreciate a lot 2019 now because during the January, the weather was very cold and we can have now a very interesting wine with many complexity and a little bit salty. It's very fun to obtain salty wines, salty white wines in Saint-Chinian. And then it's very interesting to match this wine with seafood, for example, grilled fish. Yes, yesterday I was with friends and with the plancha, we grilled fish and it was very, very interesting. And I'm very lucky because I have 2020. It's a very, very amazing wine. Very, really. I love 2020.
I was going to interrupt there, sorry, because I know that you have no 2019 left at the estates. We have literally sort of a couple of months worth of 2019, which everybody's drinking now, and then we will move to the 2020.
Yeah.
So just tell us how the 2020 will differ from the 2019.
The yield was very, very low. Sorry for me, but in fact, the temperature was more regular, and we have very beautiful complexity, elegance, freshness. And I think if you remember 2010, it's very, it's a perfect ripe with many flowers, white flowers. And I love this type of wine because for me, it's very interesting to create red wines. It's easier for me, I think. But to create elegant and fresh white wine, it's kind of a combat. It's difficult. It's for me. I tried to obtain very fresh wines like in the north of France or maybe like in England, and because thanks to some grapes, thanks to altitude of the vines, because in fact we look for vines at 300 meters of altitude to obtain very fresh wines.
Fantastic, excellent. I love the 2019. I think, you know, for me, it has almost this sort of peach apricot note to it. You know, there's lovely structure in the mouth. I think, you know, for me, I'd love to try this with food. I think it's a lovely one. If we were in Saint-Chinian with you today, and we were drinking this wine, what would we be eating?
Sorry?
If we were in Saint-Chinian with you today, and we were drinking this wine, what would we eat?
I don't know the term in English. Dorade. Do you know dorade?
Dorade, yes, yeah.
Dorade, grilled dorade with onion, lemon. It's very good. Or for aperitif, for me, it's time to aperitif. Tapas with tapenade and many things. It's very good too.
Fantastic, excellent, good. Let me just see if there's any questions in the chat box. Lots of positive comments. Maybe try it with some ratatouille, this particular wine, a suggestion there. But very good. Christine, your English is perfect.
Sorry.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Nigel. I'll see you soon.
I really do love this wine, and I think it's very much a food wine. So sincerely, many thanks for joining us, and hopefully we will see you in the UK when we come through all of this.
Thank you.
Thank
see you soon. Bye-bye.
If you could now mute yourself, Christine, and switch your video off, and if I could ask Dimitri to kindly switch your video on and unmute yourself. Okay, I think Christine still has a video on. Perfect, there we are. Dimitri, how are you?
I'm very well, Nigel, and you?
I'm very good. So yes, thank you very much for joining us so early, because what time is it there in California at the moment?
In Kent is about the same time as you in Manchester, Nigel. So.
You've let us all down. I was gonna tell everybody that you were in Santa Barbara, but
I wish it was, because we've got about 10 centimeters of snow outside in Tunbridge Wells. So everything is blocked, no car, nothing on the road. It's quite a lot actually. So good.
All right, good. Sorry. The question just come in from Ronan Sayburn asking if Dimitri can start speaking English, please.
I'm going to stay polite, so it's okay. I'll pass that question.
Fantastic. Okay, so Dimitri, so today you're going to introduce Nielsen for us. So can you tell us a little bit about the estate, please?
Of course, but thanks very much, Nigel, for the opportunity, and to Boutinot also. Always great to do some work with you. And yeah, good. So all about Nielsen Pinot Noir today, 2017 vintage from Santa Barbara. Very historical estate from Santa Barbara, because it was originally created by Uriel Nielsen. That's where it takes the name from. And Uriel Nielsen was the first the first commercial vineyard in Santa Barbara in 1964, so a lot of fruits, and that vineyard is still in front of the winery. There is always a little bit of confusion with Nielsen and Byron. And what happened? So originally in 1964, when he planted the first commercial vintage, and when he produced his first wine later on, the estate was called the Nielsen Estate. And then Uriel Nielsen had no descendants, so he had no children to take over the estate. But at the time, he had someone working with him, looking after the vineyard and making some wine, who was called Ken Byron Brown. Then he transfers the sort of the vineyard onto, I'm not even sure they did a financial transaction, I think, because he was working, he had no descendant, he decided just to give the vineyard to him. So Ken Byron Brown started an estate under his name in 1984 called Byron, and that's where the confusion sometimes is. He was then sort of put on the spotlight in the 90s because Robert Mondavi bought it in 1990. Because at the time, I mean, Santa Barbara was not well known. What really put Santa Barbara on the spotlight is a film Sideways, as everyone knows. And after the film Sideways, consumption of Merlot started to go down in the US, and Pinot Noir consumption started to go up. So a lot of winery were created in that era, and especially in Santa Barbara, where the film was coming from. So, but Robert Mondavi in the 90s bought the estate because he believed so much on the quality of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir being able to be produced in Santa Barbara, and that sort of really put that estate onto the maps. And it was sold in the sort of the mid 2000s to an investment company called Legacy Estate. And then us at Jackson, I mean, the Jackson family bought it in 2006. In 2009, the estate was sort of split into two different areas. Byron, to sort of produce a very high-end sort of single vineyard wine. And Nielsen was sort of reintroduced to sort of produce what the estate it's all about, you know, that sort of estate in front of the winery. That cuvée, it's a Santa Barbara cuvée, with sort of the flagship of the estate, or the estate cuvée of the estate, if you want. And there is a little bit of fruit purchase also in Los Alamos and Santa Rita Hills. So the three main areas where we source the fruit for this wine, it's Santa Maria Valley, the original estate, Los Alamos with a vineyard with part of the Jackson, and there is a small purchase from a contract, and Santa Rita Hills, where there is also some vineyard for the Jackson and also a little bit of fruit coming into the expression. The way the winery has sort of built their sort of reputation is they did a lot of sort of taste and experiment on sort of clonal selection. And one of the cool things to do if you go to the winery is you can test clone side by side as a sort of a winery tasting. The winery was at the time was sort of built by Robert Mondavi. He used the same guys who did Opus One to come and create the winery. So it's all about sort of being able to have those small lot vinified separately, to being able to identify them, and then to create a sort of different cuvées than they want all together. People who often ask me, sorry, Nigel.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, sorry, before you talk about the winery, and I know there's a great story about the winery, can you just, for everyone's benefit, just give them a little bit of sort of idea about the geography of Santa Barbara?
So Santa Barbara, we're about an hour north of Los Angeles. So that's where we are situating. We are really into between two sort of mountain sites, or the two major mountain sites, where the Santa Ynez Mountain, and the Santa Madre Mountain. And what makes Santa Barbara quite special is because the mountain ranges goes from east to west over there. So completely different to the mountain ranges in the north, in sort of the Sonoma area or Mendocino, where they go from north to south. So enabling the influence from the ocean, is crucial for the production of grape in California, to go much further inland. So making it one of the coolest places to grow grape in California, but also enabling this area to have one of the longest ripening season. That's why you get always those sort of Pinot Noir with quite a lot of fragrance sort of character, because of that sort of long ripening season. There is now about 7 different AVA. Los Alamos, so one of the sort of part where we go and get some fruit, hasn't got the AVA yet, but probably one of the next one to get the AVA. And you've had 3. I mean, for the guys, I know some of the guys who are here today are doing sort of competition and those sort of things, but you've got sort of a newer sort of AVA in Ballard Canyon, Happy Canyon of Santa Barbara. So we're sort of new AVA who came into charge, I think, in 2019 or 2020. So it's still quite a young area, because if you think about it, 1964, it's not that long ago. So there is quite a lot of dynamism. There is a sort of young generation also, and that area, you know, there is a lot of guys who love surf or sort of export stream who are based in Santa Barbara. It's probably one of my the great area you can go, and even Santa Barbara, the city, is got such a nice sort of vibe when you go down over there.
You would think. Sorry to interrupt, Dimitri, but you'd think that sort of, with it being so close to Los Angeles, it might be a little bit too warm to grow Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
So the Pacific Ocean must have a huge impact on the area.
a massive impact, and sometimes what people don't realize, and the Pacific Ocean is a mass of cold water. You always say if the water over there was warm, it'd be impossible to grow grape because it'd just be too warm. So of course the impact of the influence of the ocean is crucial to be able to grow grape over there. And I mean, one of the things everyone talks when you are in California and the coastal region, and especially in Santa Barbara, is the fog influence. But the fog in comparison to Sonoma tends to develop earlier in the morning and tends to clear before what you will be as you are more up north over there. But that's crucial if you want to grow grape over there.
And I remember you telling me that sort of the mountains have an effect as well, because the mountains almost act like a funnel. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah. So, to be able to get the sort of that cool sort of breeze, making the influence, going much further inland. Because if you go down to the north, I mean, if you get by the time you get to, for example, Napa, so from the Pacific Ocean to Napa Valley, you've got 3 small ranges of mountain, and by the time you finish Napa Valley, you've got 5 over there because it's east to west. It's not the same inclination, so it's really the valley, and you've got a lot of. I mean, Santa Barbara is quite well known also for growing strawberries over there. So also showing, and it's not. It needs a fresher sort of climate also to be able to grow, as we know in England, especially in Kent. That sort of freshness is crucial in terms of flavor sort of development. Yeah. On the wine, I mean, the winery, as I was saying, it's known for their clonal section, but they were one of the first probably winery also to use only 100% French oak, and that's what the winery is known for. We are lucky at Jackson because we've got our own stave mill and our own sort of cooperage company we call World Cooperage, where we've got center a little bit everywhere. I mean, it's quite an important cooperage company. It's an other side of the business where we own, I think, about 50% on it. But what it gives access to any of our winemaker, access to some oak from the different forests of France. So depending on what they want to do also, they can, you've got the vineyard selection, but you've got also the oak selection, which is quite important for us, who makes what Nielsen and our wine are. So.
Okay, so can you tell us now a little bit about this wine that we're going to have, the Santa Barbara County Pinot?
So 2017 vintage was a complicated vintage for California, especially more if you look at the sort of the Central Coast area, a lot more for Monterey area than it was for Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara, they did a good job over there. Monterey, they struggled a bit more because they had quite a lot of rain. So some of the wine from 2017 in Monterey and sometimes even more up north in sort of Sonoma area could be a little bit diluted. Santa Barbara was not as affected. After 17, 18 is great vintage, and people are saying also with great aging potential. So that's quite exciting to see the 18 also coming. But the fruits that we are looking for the Nielsen Santa Barbara, it's we want a Pinot Noir to showcase what the varietal of Pinot Noir can do through, of course, Santa Barbara. So with those sort of red cherry sort of character who are there on the attack, you get those sort of slightly fresher, sort of red fruit character, comes after on the palate, those sort of spiciness also with there. What I like about it, I think the value for money for this wine has been consistent for me over the years, and I always remember when I started working with Jackson, I always thought that was one of the great values and we had on portfolio, because sometimes at that sort of price point, you can have Pinot Noir in sort of one dimension. I think there is a nice depth of character and a nice complexity to the wine who make it very enjoyable. And,
is there any oak in this, Dimitri?
Yes, there is oak. There is about 10% in oak, so French oak, as I was saying, but not a lot of new oaks. That's what we are looking for. I mean, what we want, it's just the brightness of the fruit on that cuvée. That's what this wine is made for. So it's, I think, on this vintage is 6% of new oak only.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's lovely and vibrant. It has this, for me, this sort of the red fruit characters, the raspberry, the strawberry, a little bit of sort of cranberry there, nice and crunchy. And as you said, sort of a wine perfect as a wine by the glass option. Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, sort of, if we were with you in Santa Barbara, what would we be enjoying this wine with?
I think a nice piece of beef on a grill with sort of roasted tomato also on the grill. That's what they do quite often. When we've got guests coming to the winery, and I mean, we don't have facilities to sort of cook at the winery, but sometimes if we can program it, they can put the barbecue out for a few customers, so it's always nice. But so yeah, nice sort of piece of beef on the grill with a few tomato, a bit of salad. I think everyone would be quite happy with that.
Fantastic. Yes, I agree. If you do have a question for Dimitri, please post it in the chat box and I'll read it out to Dimitri. In terms of the estate, what other varietals are grown on the estate?
So the estate is very well known, of course, for their Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, but there is one thing that people don't know. They do a little bit of Pinot Blanc with sort of kept for sort of cellar door sort of sale over there. But it's one of the things. I mean, a lot of people say, when they go to California, they tend to spend a lot of time in Sonoma and in Napa Valley, because that's where the history is of Californian. But make the effort to go down. I mean, first of all, the drive from if you are in Sonoma or even San Francisco, the drive down to Santa Barbara is absolutely amazing. I always say, if you want to live the American dream, one of the great things to do, it's you hire a car, you take a convertible, yes, and you put country music, quite high on the radio, go down, and I mean, what makes that drive fantastic? It's because the road from San Francisco to LA, it's probably no further than about 200 meters from the ocean. So in terms of scenery, it's a beautiful drive. You can stop in sort of Carmel in the middle, for lunch or for a stopover, and it's a great place. And down in Santa Barbara, the people are so relaxed over there. I mean, there is a lot of really good restaurants who are based in Santa Barbara. It's very vibrant, a lot of young winemakers also who are doing some impressive stuff. And don't forget, the region is quite new. I mean, really the sort of the boom of Santa Barbara is only 15, 20 years maximum in terms of age and history. So yeah.
Sounds amazing. A couple of questions coming in. So Giuseppe from Cognition just asking, you were talking about the oak regime. How long does it spend in oak?
10 months. 10 months.
Okay.
And that will really depend, from vintages to vintages, because I mean, I think in 2016 was only 9 months, and the proportion of new oak will be from probably about 5% to maybe about 10-15%, depending on the vintage.
Okay.
What with Santa Barbara is that sort of vibrancy of the fruit character. That's what we want. Yeah.
Okay, a couple of nice comments coming in. So Roman Berger from the vineyard at Stockcross, just sort of commenting about the drive, certainly how beautiful it is, and Melania from Medler, basically saying that she loves the sort of, or she likes the balance of the fruit and the subtle oak. So there we
Thanks,
go.
Tanya.
A question in from Victor. Are the vineyards irrigated?
No, not over there. Not down. I mean, there is drip irrigation in some of the vineyard, but most of the vineyard we don't have any.
So is that dry farmed?
I mean, overall no, because there is some irrigation into some of the vineyard, but some of the vineyard, especially the old vineyard, will be dry farm over there.
So that was a question in from Victor from Shea Bruce. Excellent. I think that's all of the questions and the comments. So Dimitri, lovely wine. I've always been a fan of both Byron and Nielsen. I do think they are excellent wines. I love the Nielsen Chardonnay as well. I think that's again very much like the Pinot Super Value. But thank you very much indeed for joining us. Sorry you weren't in Santa Barbara. You were only in Kent, but I'm sure Kent is equally as good as Santa Barbara. But once again, thank you very much for joining us. I know you've had a busy day. I know you were very early doing a Australian presentation, I think this morning, first thing, wasn't it? So, yeah. So thank you for taking the time to spend it with us as well.
Thank you.
If you could now kindly mute yourself and turn your video on, and I'm going to ask Valentina to unmute yourself and turn your video on, please.
Yes.
Fantastic. Hi, Valentina. So, Valentina, joining us live from Veneto.
Yes, from Verona.
Fantastic. Excellent.
Sunny
Thank you
Verona
very
today.
much. Thank you. So, Pra, could you tell us a little bit about the fantastic estate of Pra, please?
Yes. So hi, everybody. My name is Valentina, and I've been working here at Pra Winery since 8 years. So long time already. We are located precisely in Monteforte, which is not Monforte, but Monteforte d'Alpone, in Veneto region. Monteforte, together with Soave itself, are the two main towns for producing Soave Classico. In fact, as a winery, we are originally white wine producer. If you move a little bit western direction, Lake Garda and Milan, after these two valleys, Val d'Alpone of Monteforte, Val Tramigna of Soave town, you start finding other 7 valleys, which together are considered the Valpolicella. So all the valleys are south to north addressed, and this area is about 30,000 square kilometers, embracing north the town of Verona, going from the extreme west from Lake Garda to the extreme east to Soave Classico, and limited north from the Alp. In fact, we are in the foothill area. It's a subalpine area. So in our back we have the Alps, and in front of us there is Pianura Padana, so flat area of Pianura Padana.
Fantastic. And just remind me, when was Pra established?
83 first bottle marketed. Before, family Pra was farmers' family, so they used to sell the grapes as the majority of the people here in Soave. Graziano, the youngest of 3 brothers, studied enology and is still nowadays the owner and the winemaker of our winery. So we have been always had a very constant philosophy in winemaking. In fact, Graziano strongly believes in enhancing only our indigenous grape varieties. We don't have an international grape in our winery. We only farm Garganega, Trebbiano di Soave for the whites, for Soave Classico, and Corvina, Corvinone, Rondinella, and Oseleta for the reds of the Valpolicella.
Fantastic. So in terms of the estate, you are, in my opinion, specialists for Soave and Valpolicella. And in terms of the Valpolicella, so it's an estate that I understand that you sort of you farm it organically. Is that correct?
Yes. So as I said before, we originally come from Soave area. So we originally white wine producer since 40 years. In 2 years, we're going to celebrate 40 years of career. We bought a land in Valpolicella in 2001 and planted from scratch a vineyard. So now it's about 20 years old, the vines. Since it was very pure soil, we decided to work organic since day one. And we also like that idea of putting the unicorn on the label as a symbol of purity. So to recall the idea of a very untouched area. To be honest, since harvest 2020, we are certified also in Soave. So the winery is completely organic. Most of our vintages, if we are not hit by hail or frost or other problem of floods, We are independent. This means we don't buy grapes, we don't buy wine. Graziano Pra is one of the 40 undersigners of Independent Winemakers Association of Italy. So we tend to, yes, be and not to purchase anything else from outside.
And in terms of the two estates, then, so Soave and Valpolicella, how much vineyard area do you own?
So we are little above 40 hectares now. 33 is for the whites, for in Soave Classico, and the rest is Valpolicella. Di Soave is the biggest Italian white wine region, and it's very differentiated. Lot of flat, and 1/4 of 7,000 hectares is the hilly part, which is in the middle between the two towns and the two valleys, so Monteforte, Soave. In the middle, you have volcanic origin, so rich in basalt, black and red soil, so lots of minerality, lots of nice sapidity in the wines. And the more you move western, so towards Lake Garda, the more you have more glacial origin, marl, and very rich in limestone. In fact, our property in Valpolicella, which lays in Val di Lasi, so the first valley, if we move west, and the last valley east, is very close to the mountain when compared to the classical region, which is closer to Lake Garda. And this influenced a lot of the stylistic of the wines. In fact, where we are at 500 meters above the sea level, La Morandina, it's an highly ventilated area, first of all. Altitude, highly ventilation, very close to the mountains, particularly Monte Carega, and very rich soil in limestone. All these, and I add usually that Graziano is a white wine producer, so very attentive to clean style and very vertical style in drinking. So our Valpolicella obviously follow the rules of the disciplinary in air drying the grapes, but keep a beautiful elegance and finesse, and also a lot of freshness in the glass.
I love this wine. I think it's a beautiful wine. It's a beautiful, beautiful, well-made wine. So tell us a little bit more about the production of this particular wine. So this is the 2018 Ripasso Superiore.
Yeah, so the production of the four actually, but we don't produce the sweet version Recioto. So we only concentrate on Valpolicella, Ripasso, and Amarone are interconnected, as you may already know. So they are always obtained with a blend of on the typical Corvina, Corvinone, Rondinella, and Oseleta. We use Oseleta because it gives a lot of nice tannins in a blend which is more renowned for having acidity than tannins. So for the long aging of our wines, we prefer using some Oseleta grapes. So it's quite late harvested grapes. So in the end of September and till the half of October. So we harvested the best bunches that we air dry for the Amarone. And that is the 40% of the yield can be laid down for making Amarone. The total yield out of an hectare is about 120 quintals of grapes. Last year, 100 because of tough vintage. So the rest can be vinified for making Valpolicella, which has always been considered a daily wine for daily consumption. So fresh, crispy, easy, but beautiful to drink. In the meanwhile, we air dry the grapes for Amarone for minimum 100 days. So you cannot produce Amarone before the 1st of December. We personally go till the end of December, vinify the Amarone, and the yield out of the grapes is the 40%. So in 100 quintals of grapes, you obtain 20 quintals, 20 hectoliters, sorry, of Amarone, and you can produce the double of the Ripasso. So once you vinified the Amarone, you keep the skins in the bottom of the tank. We usually do 20 days maceration for the Amarone. We set the Amarone in barrels, save the skins, and re-ferment them on some Valpolicella fresh wine for 10 days, more or less. So this is the procedure to make the Ripasso. Originally, it was used by farmers to reuse the skins before selling to distilleries and to make a more complex structure, Valpolicella, a little bit more alcoholic and more, more structured wine.
Okay. David from Panoramic 34 is asking, how do you dry the grapes?
How do you
dry the grapes?
So once upon a time, they used to be air dried in the highest floor, highly ventilated, because don't forget, in Veneto, we have a lot of fog. So that's very damaging. So it's not like making passito di pantelleria, unfortunately. So in the highest floor, with open windows and good ventilation. Nowadays, the fruttaio, so the air drying warehouse are conditioned to keep humidity very low, and that's the most important thing, because we cannot afford the rot to become a serious issue on the whole plot, on the whole cassetta case.
Okay, just going back a step, Zara from Clifton is asking, what is the altitude of the vineyards?
La Morandina is 450. It's quite high, very rich in limestone. It's purely a white soil. Okay.
Now, in terms of the grapes, once they've been dried and then they've been passed through the Valpolicella, how long does the wine spend in oak for?
So our Ripasso 12 months in tonneau.
Okay.
No, sorry, Nigel, I forgot to say that our vineyards are exposed southeast. So they are hit by the first sun rays in the morning and the freshest sun. And that's one of the factors that influence a lot the stylistic of the wine.
It's a beautiful, beautiful wine. I love this wine. For me,
yeah,
you know, sort of the
Ripasso is a little bit the halfway between Valpolicella and Amarone, and it's a wine where a lot of people debate if it's you know, good to do or not, because some people say it's a wine of second choice. We think that what makes the difference is the quality in the glass, so not the technique, so not the theory only. So we are quite proud of our Ripasso, and it's going amazingly.
I think you should be very, very proud of it. It's as I say, it's a fantastic wine. And in terms of the alcohol sits at 14.5.
This vintage 18 was quite fresh and temperate vintage. So we managed to keep the alcohol relatively low for our standards, because as we push fermentation quite strong to have dry wines, easy drinking style, and this obviously converts into more alcoholic percentage. Also in the Amarone, very low sugar. This wine is about 3 grams per liter and the Amarone is about 4. And therefore, we have a little bit more alcoholic percentage. But 2018 was quite fresh, so.
A nice comment in from Paolo from Wilton's, talking about the complexity and the mouthfeel. I agree, Paolo. I think it's Paola, sorry. I think it's a great example of Ripasso. If we were in Veneto with you today, what would we be drinking? What would we be eating? Sorry, what would we be eating? I know what we'd be drinking.
Oh, Ripasso. The Ripasso goes very well with meat, better if spiced. And so our tradition, we make pastisada de cavallo, pastisada de muso, which is donkey meat and horse meat, sorry for this. But it's slow cooked and very spiced, and it's like a stewed meat. So these go amazingly. I personally love it also with some bolognese sauce. So very easy dish, meaty, obviously, because, and also some fat, because our wines have very nice acidity that cleans them out amazingly. The color is also quite light when compared to violet standards of many Ripasso, and concentration here is very balanced. So also with some panino al salame, we have Ripasso.
Oh, fantastic. Now, some
For those who are vegetarians, some mature cheese.
some lovely comments coming in as well. Giuseppe, thinking that again, sort of talking about the persistence and the length. Remy from Le Gavroche suggested maybe that this would be absolutely fantastic with a beef bourguignon. So again, going down that sort of stew, sort of rustic sort of casserole sort of dishes. But yeah, a beautiful, beautiful wine. Fantastic. Valentina, once again, thank you very, very much for joining us. I think sort of, it is one of those wines that sort of, it's always sort of in my sort of, sort of wines for Christmas. I love drinking this any time of year, really, but a fantastic wine. So superb. Thank you very much.
Grazie, Nigel.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much for organizing this.
Thank you very much. If you can kindly now mute yourself and turn your video off. And I'm going to ask Guillermo to join us next.
Hello, Nigel, how are you?
Hi, Guillermo, how are you?
Fine, everybody's fine here, fortunately. How about you?
So just tell us where you are then, Guillermo.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Where are you in Spain?
Yeah, well, we are located in Campo de Borja, which is an appellation just below Rioja, so in the northeast of Spain. It's located in the region of Aragon, in the middle of the Ebro Valley, which is a very dry valley, hot in summer and cool in winter. So big differences of temperature between winter and summer, and also between day and night, thanks to the Cierzo wind. The Cierzo is a wind that comes from the northwest and goes through the Ebro River till the Mediterranean. Is very similar to the Mistral in the Rhone Valley, and also, well, probably thanks to this wind, we have very similarities to the Rhone viticulture. Okay, so we produce mainly Garnacha. 60% of our production is Garnacha, but also 20% is Syrah. So if you look into the south of the Rhone Valley, they are using the same varieties as us. So very similar region in terms of weather. Okay.
So it's very mountainous, isn't it, where you are?
Yeah. So it's very common that we are known as the empire of the Garnacha, because probably the Garnacha was born here centuries ago. Well, the monks from a monastery very close to the winery brought the viticulture like in the 12th century, following the studies that we have here. And since then, the viticulture has been developed by the families till now. The Bodegas Borsao indeed was founded in the beginning of this century by 3 cooperatives. So we are the union of a lot of vine growers, which decided to sell altogether the grapes back in the 50s or the 60s. In the last century. So nowadays, Bodegas Borsao is a limited company that well, is very well known all over the world to be one of the best Garnacha producers in Spain. Okay, we well, as I said, the weather here is hard because it's very hot in summer and also cool in winter. Very dry, extremely dry, and also windy. So most of our vineyards are dry farmed, but we are very close to the mountain of Moncayo and the Ebro River. So we have like mountains and cliffs all around here, which are very important for us because thus we can have vineyards at 350 meters and vineyards at 800 meters. So depending on what we are looking for, we have Garnachas in the highest part, which are, in my opinion, the best Garnachas in our winery. But also we have Shiraz in the lowest area, which ripe very well and show a very interesting personality, okay, as well.
And how many hectares in total then are you working with, Guillermo?
Okay, we are now managing around 2,200 hectares.
Okay.
Which is a lot, I know. But as I said, we are a leader here in the empire of the Garnacha. We were the first producer which included Garnacha on the front label in Spain with our Tres Picos. And since beginning of this century, we started also with the Shiraz. We planted around 300 hectares of Shiraz in the area, and the result has been fantastic. This was made with the help of Chris Ringland, which is our consultant winemaker. And probably many of you can know Chris Ringland. He's the master of Shiraz from Australia. He has, I think, 13 wines with 100 points made with this variety. And he recommended us to plant this variety in the area because he saw this area very similar to Rhone Valley, but also to Barossa Valley in Australia. In my opinion, the Syrah here in the area is something in between. It's not that fine or that elegant like in France, but also is less powerful than in Australia. So we have this the freshness from France, and we have also the ripeness and these typical ripe aromas from Australia. So the combination is quite good.
Now, in terms of Bodegas Borsao, yes, you are a large organization, and you certainly are noted for your excellent value entry-level wines. But then you also have the well, in addition to the wine that we're going to be tasting, some top cuvées, which as you mentioned, sort of Chris consults you with. To the point that I remember a few years ago, I think it was Robert Parker spoke some very nice words about Bodegas Borsao.
Well, it opened a lot of doors, but we don't know Robert Parker personally. He hasn't been here, but he said Bodegas Borsao was the best winery in the world, the best value winery in the world. We are very known for having a very good quality price ratio, and mainly that was because our region is not very known. Campo de Borja is normally less known than Borsao itself.
So in terms of the top wines, today we've got the Cabriola. Tell us a little bit about the Cabriola, please.
Yeah, well, I'm not that small. This is a 3-liter bottle, so I'm sorry. So Cabriola is a blend of Garnacha, 60%, and then Shiraz with a small touch of Carignan, which is known here as Masuelo. And it's oaked for 12 months, but all the varieties separately. We collect the grapes, all the grapes from the growers separately, parcel by parcel, and all of them are vinificated separately. Okay, so the Garnacha spends 10 to 12 months in the barrel. The Shiraz spends one part, 60% is oaked for 12 to 14 months, and the rest is not oaked, is only kept in the stained steel tanks.
We're talking very old vines, aren't we, Guillermo?
Yeah, the Garnacha is very old. The Garnachas have like maybe 60 years old on average, but the Shiraz are younger, are much younger. The average is 15 years. So, and the Masuelas are also very old, 45, 50 years old. And the result is a very, in my opinion, is the secret of this wine is the balance, because it's fruity thanks to the Garnacha, it's spicy thanks to the Shiraz, but it's also fresh, intense, and very long. Okay, so very easy to pair with food, like with any kind of tapas, any kind of meat, especially in my opinion with lamb. Okay, I love this wine with lamb because it's very typical in the area as well. But with many kind of tapas because of its freshness and fruity. Okay.
You mentioned there sort of Chris's input on this. For those people that aren't aware of Chris, so Chris is well, Chris is actually a Kiwi that's based in Australia and has been in Australia for a number of years. Chris was at Rockford for a number of years. So the Rockford Basket Press Shiraz has won lots and lots of awards and accolades over the years. What is the oak regime on this particular wine? Because I know Chris likes to use both French and American oak in a lot of his winemaking.
Well, as I told you, we make the vinification by separately, by variety. So the Garnachas are mainly oaked in French barrels, second use mainly for this wine. And the Shiraz are oaked in the barrels that come from Australia, that come from Chris Ringland. So we buy the barrels there in Australia. It's American oak that is sent to Australia to create the barrels, and then he sends the barrels to us.
Okay.
And then Yeah, sorry.
Please, no, please, go on.
Yeah, and then after the vinification, after the timing out, our winemaker, Jose Luis Chueca, makes the final blend between the three varieties, and the wine spends in the bottle a year or a year and a half, and then it's released to the market.
Okay, question in from Francesco from Shooting Glen. Do you think the DO rules limit somehow the style of some of your wines or ideas of your wine making?
Well, yes. That's why like 15 or 20 years ago, our wines used to be Crianza, Reserva, Grand Reserve, and so. And now almost none of our wines have this classification, okay? Because we decided to use our own rules, and the winemaker decides when the wine is perfect to be removed from the barrels or to be released to the market or wherever. And also in terms of varieties, we have some very good vineyards of Viognier, which cannot be used as a DO wine. Okay, so we are making some some tests with this variety. We were testing the variety for years until the appellation allowed to use the Viognier wine for a DO wine. That was really difficult for us because, as I said, we share a lot of characteristics with the Rhone Valley, and you know that Viognier is very used there. And for instance, the Verdejo is allowed here and has been allowed for years, and we don't share any characteristic with them. So with the Rueda appellation, so it's quite difficult to work with this. But for some markets, especially, we need to be under any DO.
Okay, question in from Paula from Wilton's. Are you noticing the effects of climate change in the wine and also in the vineyard?
I think this is a fact that everybody in the viticulture is seeing. The summers are hotter than ever, and that's why the new vineyards are normally irrigated, because not to get more grapes or to increase the yield, but to avoid this dryness that's really affect the young vineyards.
Okay. If anybody does have any more questions, please post them in the chat box. I love this wine. Again, fantastic wine, very sort of forward, and you know the red fruit that comes through from the Garnacha. Then you've got the dark fruits that certainly come in there from the Shiraz elements. Great structure, great depth as well, and such a long finish on this particular wine.
I really think that the Mazuela, the Carignan, gives this structure and this freshness to the wine. It's a variety that not every year really ripes very well here, but in the 16, which is this vintage, we got it and really makes the wine fresher and gives him some structure that is really interesting, as well as the red fruits and the spices and black fruits that you commented about the Garnacha and Shiraz.
Are the vintages relatively consistent in Campo de Borja, or do you get a lot of vintage variation?
Yeah, I think they are more consistent than other areas around the world and other areas in Spain, because we have also every year we have dryness, we have wind, we have warm or even very hot summers. So even the coolest years, we have most of very, very regular vintages, except if some storm or whatever comes and affect the grapes.
Okay, question in from David from Panoramic 34. Again, sort of asking, what is the aging potential on this wine?
Well, it's hard to say because if this was the first vintage. This is the first vintage of Cabriola in the market, but we hope that at least 5-6 years could be preserved in your bodega. Yeah.
I think it may have a little bit longer than that. I'd love to have a look at this in 10 years' time. And
yeah, probably yes.
So,
yeah. Yeah, because despite of the Garnacha is known to be a little oxidative, we Garnachas have very nice structuring. Couple weeks ago, I was tasting our Garnacha, our top Garnacha, which only has 5 months in oak, and I made a vertical tasting, and I tasted 2005, 2006, and they were very fresh. They're very fruity. So the time gives to these wines maybe more than we expect.
Okay, fantastic, lovely. Guillermo, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for introducing Campo de Boca and the fantastic wines of Bodegas Borsal. For those people that don't know Bodegas Borsal, please come and sort of taste the wines whenever you can. Speak to your sales rep. I'm sure we can sort some samples out for you, because along with the Cabriola, you also have the Zaris, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it was in fact one of the top 100 wines in the world from a Wine Spectator this year. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
And even you're touching there on Robert Parker's comments from a few years ago. Sort of, you're as an estate, you're very consistent from the entry level all the way through to the top, and that's why I'm sure Mr. Parker spoke so highly of you. But Guillermo, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Nigel, and all the attendants.
If you can kindly mute yourself and turn off your video, and hopefully waiting for us is going to be Jose from Emiliana.
Hey, Nigel.
Jose, hi, how are you?
Good, and you?
Very good, thank you. Very good, thank you. At the start of this session, I mentioned, through the run-through, sort of the legendary wine of Koyam, because it really is a legendary wine, and we'll touch on Koyam in a second. But can you tell us a little bit about the fantastic wine Emiliana?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you everybody for joining us. Thanks, Nigel, for organizing this tasting. So I work for Emiliana Organic Vineyards. As the name says, we are organic producer for almost more than 20 years today. But we didn't start it like that. The winery was founded in 1986 by Jose Gilisasti. So the Gilisasti family is one of the most well-known families in Chile. They are the main shareholders of Conchitoro. And Jose, he was an agronomic engineer, and he wanted to find the best valleys for each variety that we produce in Chile. So that's when we started Emiliana, but it wasn't until almost 10 years later that we changed into organic production. The reason that he decided to do that is because, as he was an agronomic engineer, he loved to go into the vineyards and, at the moment spray the chemicals that we were using. But sometimes he was arriving home with massive headaches, the skin of his hands were destroyed. So he was really in touch with his workers, and he realized, okay, if I'm doing that to myself, I just can't imagine what I'm doing to my workers, to the plants, to the soil, to the health of the soil. So that's when he decided to move into organic. But 20 years ago in Chile, organic was not a known word actually, and even less in the wine industry.
You were the first, though. That's correct. You were the first certified organic?
Yes, exactly. We started organic in 1998, and well, it takes 3 years to be certified organic. So we were the first organic winery and also the first biodynamic winery in 2001 from South America that we got the certification. And well, something I didn't mention is that, you know, Chile is a very large country and quite narrow. So you can find almost every kind of weather in Chile, and that's perfect for the type of winery we are today. That if you want to find a really nice Chardonnay or really crispy Sauvignon Blanc, you just go to Casablanca, just in front of the ocean. But if you want then Mediterranean type of weather and to produce wines like Coyam, that is a blend, you can go to Colchagua at the south of Chile, that is between range of mountains. So that's the good thing of Chile, that you can just play with the temperature, with the altitude, and you can produce almost everything.
Fantastic. So do you know how many varietals you're working with in total, Jose?
Well, yeah, with more than 15, but yes, of course, we don't, sometimes there are some new projects that we are tasting to see how it develops in certain places, certain valleys. But yes, I think most of the varieties, you can find them in Coyam, especially on this vintage we will taste 2018. We have just 8 different varieties on this wine.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Well, we'll come to Coyam in a second, but another question would be, how many different areas of Chile are you working with?
Well, we have a new production place in Limaria, the north of Chile. So it's a really mineral place, superb for Syrah, for Pinot Noir, for some Chardonnay as well. Then we have Casablanca, as I was mentioning before, for Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc. Also, we have some Syrah, Pinot Noir. Maipo, we have mainly Cabernet Sauvignon, San Merlot as well. Then in Cachapoal and Colchagua, we have all the Mediterranean type of varieties. And then we go to the south to Biobío. So this is new, like trendy place in Chile, trying to get cooler regions and more rain. And we have Riesling and Pinot Noir as well. But yes, at the end, from north to south, we have almost 1,000 kilometers.
And you know, sort of the theme of today, you know, wines being great value, and I think sort of Emiliana, certainly for me, always over deliver in terms of the fantastic value. It's sort of from the bottom all the way to the top. So
thank you.
Coyam, it is a legendary wine. It's one of those wines that sort of says a lot for Chile. Can you tell us, firstly, where does the name Coyam come from?
Yes, well, Coyam means oak forest in native language from Chile, so it's called Mapudungun, this native language, and we put it oak forest because if you see in our vineyard in Colchagua, that is called Los Robles is actually oak, and we have 600 hectares that are around the vineyards that are between hills, and we have a lot of oaks, and that helps a lot with the biodiversity. As I was mentioning, we are organic, we are biodynamic. So having this biodiversity come to the vineyards with the biological corridors directly from the hills, it helps a lot to control the different kind of insects that we have. So for us, it was the perfect name. It really deserved nature to be represented in a wine. So that's why it's called Coyam.
So Coyam, it's always from Colchagua. It's always from the estate as such.
Yes, in Colchagua we have around 180 hectares, and it was one of the first vineyards we have. Today, some vineyards have almost 30 years old. But yes, everything we are producing in Emiliana, from medium to ultra premium, super premium wines, is everything company-owned hectares. I didn't mention, but we have in total company-owned hectares 920 hectares, everything certified organic. And from that, 700 hectares certified biodynamic as well. Okay. And then for certain wines in the entry level, we buy from organic producers that we have been working for more than 15 years now.
Okay. Now, in terms of Coyam as well, it was Chile's first certified organic wine?
Yes, that's correct. And as you said, it's a legendary wine because this is the reason that why we are organic today. When I mentioned that they were hesitating to be organic, Jose said, okay, we will do one wine. And if we go well with that wine, we will change everything to organic production. And the first vintage we released, Coyam, in 2001, it won the best wine in the show for Wines of Chile, best blend. So it's to show that you can produce, at least in Chile, super premium wines, being organic, being sustainable, not only with the environment, but also with the workers.
Okay. And in terms of the biodynamic philosophy that you have on the estate, just give people an idea of what you do in this biodynamic method, particularly on Les Robles.
Okay, so, you know, biodynamic can be divided basically in 3 principles. The first one is that you need to have a closed system. So everything you produce, you take it out, when you take it out, like the grapes and everything, you need to put it in a natural way again. So we try to have everything close. For example, the introduction of animals, there are animals that we have in the same place, in the same land, in the same farms. When we take out the skin of the grapes and we press that, we introduce it again to the soil to have the nitrogen, including in the soil. So that's the first principle, to have a closed cycle. The second one is to follow the biodynamic calendar. That actually is not mandatory to have the certification. We try to do it as much as possible. Of course, sometimes when you say, okay, we need to prune this day or we need to harvest on Sunday, you know, Sunday, maybe the workers are not going to be very happy. So sometimes it's better to adapt also to that and maybe advance in 1 or 2 days, or just put back 2 days to adapt if it's raining or something like that. And the third principle is that we use biodynamic preparations. That the best way in biodynamic to have that is that you produce, for example, the chamomile and all the biodynamic preparations in the same place that you will put it later. That is, it's hard to do something for small producers that, you know, they can buy, or to a bigger producer, or they just put between 2 producers together to make their own preparations. But in Emiliana, as we have so many years in this story of being organic, and we have, let's say, larger production, big vineyards, we can allow, and it's even easier for us to have our own production in our place. So that's something very special for Emiliana, and that I can say not all the organic producers and biodynamic producers in the world, they can have their own production of chamomile and the other ones involved in the same place.
A question in from Remy from Le Gavroche. Why a blend? Okay, that's a good question. And especially why a blend with so many varieties, because you're used to maybe 3 or 4 varieties. But you know, when we started, we wanted to have a Collan that represents the vintage of Emiliana in that specific plot, in that specific place that is called Chagua. So it doesn't stay the same all the years. We can do from 5 to even, I think in one time we did 9 varieties, but that changed depending on the conditions of each vintage. And Noelia, who is the winemaker, she's a Spanish winemaker. She does really try to put like truthful representation of what was the vintage in Emiliana. Always the main varieties are 2, so Syrah between 40-35%, and then Carmener between 30-35%. And then sometimes we put Petit Verdot, sometimes we take it out, depending on the vintage. For example, on 2018, that it was a really good vintage. We have a lot of rain during winter, cold winter, but dry summer. We can put other varieties like Tempranillo, well, especially Carmener, we added a bit more of Carmener, that when we have a cold and rainy seasons, you know, Carmener is very weak for some diseases on the vines. So it's just a try to represent what was the vintage of Emiliana, and we play with that according to the vintage. I remember many years ago, Alvaro was explaining to me, and Noelia has taken on the same mantle, that sort of, you know, even though that sort of, it might be just like 1% Petit Verdot or 2% Carignan, it's almost like being a chef with the seasoning, you know, each adds something. And is that a fair thing to say?
Yes, exactly. For example, in 2017, we added Petit Verdot because it was a very warm and dry vintage. Was one of the, actually, you know, we have 2 phenomena. One is called El Niño, another one is La Niña. So El Niño is usually when we have rainy seasons, and La Niña is really dry seasons. So 2017 was a dry season, and that's why we could add Petit Verdot to have this structure. Petit Verdot was running really good. So we added just 2% on that vintage. And in 2018, we didn't add it. But yes, sometimes you can find 1% of Malbec or 1% of Carignan just to keep this, for example, the acidity of Carignan, the freshness, this type of like, you feel the tension on the mouth of Carignan.
And in terms of the oak regime for this wine, sometimes it's close to 100% French. Then there might be sort of 10-15% American in some vintages. Again, sort of what is the philosophy with regards to the oak?
With Koyam, we have sometimes we use in the past American oak. Today we are just using French oak. 80% so of the wine goes through French oak barrels, but we use first, second, and third use. As Christine was saying, I think it was Christine that was saying before, or I don't remember who, but they were trying to take some first use barrels and we try to put more second and third use because we don't want to have really the oak on the mouth. We want to give the complexity, the structure. But at the end, in Emiliana, in every range we want to have the fruit on the nose, on the mouth, and the typicity of each variety. So we have 80% of French oak barrels, 16% of food rest between 2,000 and 5,000 liters, and 4% on concrete egg tanks.
Question just in from Andre from the Cavalry and Guards Club. What is the impact on the yields in the vineyards because of the organic and biodynamic philosophy? And is there a relation, is it in relation to other growers in the area? Or what is in relation to the other areas in the growers?
Yes, I would say, especially the first year you change from, it's traditional agriculture. We like to call it chemical agriculture because if you think on traditional, really the traditional one was without any chemicals. So when you change from chemical to organic agriculture, the first year you have some big reduction on the yields because you stop putting everything to the plant and they need to have the roots develop and really go deep down to find all the nutrients, all the elements they need. But after 5 to 10 years, you have at the end stronger vineyards, and you develop really well a really good and strong root system. So at the end, there's not a big difference. Maybe, of course, you have a smaller yields, but it's in accordance with what we want to produce. For example, in Koyam, we are producing around 40 hectoliters per hectare. That is similar to first classification in Bordeaux. It's almost the same quantity of the same yield.
Okay. Victor from Chez Bruce is asking, is there any new oak at all in the blend?
Yes, it's yes. So from the 80% of the French oak barrels, I will say around 40% is new oak. But then we like to use second and third use as well for the same reason I was telling before. We want to have the structure, but we don't want to have the oak on the nose. We want to have a balance. So that's a small portion.
Fantastic. Excellent. Good. So how would you describe the wine?
Well, especially 2018, I find that there's a lot on the nose. There's a big range of different aromas. You have a lot of fruit, but also you have some spices, from the Syrah, from other varieties. You have some spices, some pepper from the Carmenere. So that's a really light from Koyam. That is a wine that doesn't necessarily need to be drunk with some big dishes or really like lamb. You can also pair it. Sometimes we do in Emiliana with some pizza with a pepper, and it goes really well because it's such a big nose and complex nose that it allows you to play a lot with the dishes.
It is, dare I say, and certainly for this audience, it's a very sort of sommelier friendly wine, Koyam. It's one of those wines that goes with a whole host of different sort of styles of cuisine and different meats and vegetarian dishes, and
I think that also changed from the last year. So from until 2010, 2012, we were doing much more powerful wines with the bigger concentrations, and then we understood that the clients were asking for, I wouldn't say simple wines, but easier to drink, more fruit-forward wines that have a very fresh nose. So we understood that, and that's when we start changing, like having so many first barrels, new oak, and start to use second and third use of oak.
A comment in from Ronan Sayburn, who has supported Koyam. I think, to be fair, sort of I remember the story that Ronan was actually listing Koyam long before Boutinot started to be the importer, and was one of the actually first restaurant customers at Gordon Ramsay to actually list this wine as by the glass. His comment is, always a great wine. It has the taste and smell of chili. And yeah, I know Ronan always says good things about
Thank you, Ronan.
Koyam. A comment in from Charles Karen Brown. Great food pairing wine. He loves the wine, and yeah, I agree. I think it's you know, for me, I mentioned before about over delivering, and I just think this certainly over delivers. I think, you know, it has so much complexity, so much depth, so much structure, concentration, and really is a fantastic wine. And just looking on the front of the label, so this scored 95 points from James Suckling, the vintage that we're drinking at the moment. And I should also mention as well, yes, we are tasting Koyam today, but now what is regarded as sort of the top cuvee,
yes.
It scored 100 points, is that correct? Or 98 points recently?
98 points, yes.
98
got 98 points in vintage 2017.
Fantastic.
That's right. So it was chosen in the top 5 wines from Chile. So we are really proud of that. Of course, it's our icon wine. It's Koyam, but more focusing just in 3 varieties. That is Syrah, Carmenère, and Cabernet Sauvignon. Same place, same region. So it's like the big brother of Koyam. If you like Koyam, that is more like easier to pair with different dishes than here is a perfect wine for just some really nice dinner. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so again, some more comments just coming in. Remy from Le Gavroche, maybe sort of having this wine, sort of slow cooked lamb that's been barbecued. Yeah, so with burnt
I'm starting to get hungry now.
Oh, yeah, that would be amazing as well. It's knowing this wine, having enjoyed this wine over many years, I can assure you it's one of those. It is one of those wines that you can have with lots of different sort of cuisine, plus also just to enjoy and just drink on its own. So
exactly.
Jose, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you
for taking the time to join us. I really do love the Emiliano range. I think, as I said before, great value and very pure, expressive styles. Certainly on sort of, you know, some of the varietal wines, but Koyam will always be one of my favorite wines in the Boutinot portfolio. So thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. Always a pleasure to drink together Koyam.
Thank you. If you could kindly mute yourself now and turn your video off. And I just once again wanted to thank everybody for joining us. Big thank you to the producers. So thank you to Colette, to Christine, to Dimitri, Valentina, Guillermo, and Jose. Thank you very much also to Steve in the IT department for all his technical wizardry. Hopefully everything that went to plan today and there was no sort of issues with regards to the sound or indeed the video playing facility. Big thank you also to my colleagues, Scott, Sophie and Bea. Thank you very much to Yvonne down in customer services for ensuring everybody got their bottles. But the big thank you is to each and every one of you for tuning in today. As I mentioned previously, you know, sort of we realize it's tough. We realize we're in this situation that, you know, we don't want to be in. Hopefully, we're going to be only a few weeks now, maybe a couple of months until we're back to some sort of normality. So we do sincerely appreciate your time coming along today and tasting the wines with us. So sincerely, many thanks to everybody that's tuned in. All I'm going to say now is sort of I'm going to stop recording in a moment, but I'm not going to switch the Zoom off. So if anybody did want to unmute themselves and unmute their videos and chat amongst yourselves, you can do. But once again, sincerely, many thanks to all the people that made this happen, and hopefully see you all soon. So you take care. Thank you very much.